Sal Berry and Tim Parish. This is the Puck Junk Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the Puck Junk Hockey Podcast. I'm Sal Berry and with me is Tim Parish, and today we are going to talk about the 2022 NHL playoffs. We'll talk about round one and what went down with that, and then we'll talk a little bit about the upcoming round two. Lots to talk about here. Tim, how you doing, and what did you think of the playoffs overall so far?
I could really go for a massage right now. My back is hurting. Yeah.
Your back is hurting. Why is that?
Because my couch isn't comfortable, and sitting on it for 2 weeks straight watching hockey is not helping.
That's too bad, because I also sat on my couch, but I have a newer couch. I bought my couch in the end of 2020, and it is very comfortable. And I spent as much time on my couch as I could.
We bought one of those when we bought our house. We bought like this couch set that looked really good in the store, and for some reason was comfortable there. But when we got it home, not so much. But you can plug your phone into it, and it charges. So there's that.
Oh. Okay, well, it's got a built-in charger. I could actually see the use of that, because I'll be like sitting on my couch and I'll be like tweeting during the hockey game, and then like my phone is like running out of power. Then I'll put it on the charging station, which is next to the couch. But then I'm like, I wonder if anybody responded to that hilarious tweet that I just put out. And then I have to like unhook the thing from the charger to look at it. So yeah, I guess I just need to get either a longer cord or a couch with a built-in phone charger.
That seems to be like the norm anymore. Most couches like have it, which means you have to plug your couch in because it has to have a power source, obviously. So
wow,
if you've never plugged your couch in before, that's the world we live in now.
No good can come from that. I think that just sounds like a class action lawsuit waiting to happen.
I don't know how much juice is running through it, but it's enough obviously to power a USB port to charge your phone. So.
Right. Which is not that much. So I really liked the fact that on Saturdays and Sundays, the NHL was really smart about its scheduling and staggered the games enough. Now, I understand in the first round you have a lot of games going on. You're not going to be able to watch all the games, so you have to kind of pick one. Like for me, I in the first round, I mean, depending on who was playing, if the Panthers were playing, I watched them. If the Lightning were playing, I watched them. I didn't watch the St. Louis, Minnesota series as much. I didn't watch the Colorado and Nashville series,
all 4 games to watch. Of it. Yeah, right. It wasn't much to watch there.
So it's kind of like you have to pick. It's kind of like going to like a big concert like Riot Fest or something, where you have 3 stages going at once, and you just kind of have to pick which bands you want to see. And that's kind of like what the first round is like you can't see them all. So you have to just pick the ones that you like the most. And then maybe during intermission, you change channels. But then on a Saturday and a Sunday, I think one day they had a game at like 11 a.m. Chicago time. And then they had like another one at like 3, and then they had one at 6, and then they had one at 9, and I'm like, I'm in heaven. This is awesome. Nonstop playoff hockey. I can be antisocial and just watch hockey and just love life. And that's kind of what I did.
Yeah, unfortunately, I have too many other things that occupy my time.
Yes,
so
the adulting.
I didn't get to watch. Yeah, I didn't get to watch everything, but I watched a lot. That's for sure.
So that Colorado Nashville series, I want to talk about that first because it's on the top of my list. It was the first series to end. So Colorado won in 4 games straight, but I will say that they pretty much won that series in the first period of the first game, where they scored 5 goals in the first period. Nashville pulls David Rittich, puts in Connor Ingram, and Ingram played all right, but no, Colorado pretty much trounced them. The closest the Predators got to winning a game was losing game 2-1 in overtime, which is not a win, that's a loss. But that's as close as they came to winning was basically overtime loss. So yeah, that was pretty quick. 4 up, 4 down. whatever, kind of expected. I mean, Nashville is one of those teams that just kind of eked into the playoffs, and Colorado is awesome. So, not much that they could do there.
Yeah. First of all, is it Riddich or Riddick? Because I always called him Riddick.
Like Chronicles of Riddick.
Yeah, like a K sound instead of the CH sound.
I think it's Riddich, but
Okay,
I don't know.
Whatever. I don't care. It's a moot point. Yeah, that whole series. I mean, nobody really had Predators. Nobody was giving them a chance. That's why they had such high betting odds. Because we can't go 5 seconds without having those shoved down our throats with every game we watch. But with that being said, look, it's going to be a common theme here as we go over all these series, and that is if you don't have your starting goaltender, you're pretty much SOL.
Yes.
Because, I mean, that's exactly what happened here. You got UC Saros, who was phenomenal throughout this, throughout the
regular
season. Yeah, I mean, he won 38 games, and I think he had like a 2.6 goals against average. So, the guy was solid for them. He's one of the biggest reasons why they were able to squeak themselves into the playoffs this year.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, the fact that you have to go from, David Riddich to Connor Ingram, how are you going to match up against the firepower of the Avalanche? The answer,
Right.
You're not. You're just not. And who would have thought Matthew Shane was just going to be like a beast? That was what shocked me.
Mm-hmm.
He basically nobody's heard him since he left Colorado, and yet he was like the one shining beacon for Nashville. So, which was cool. But when you're captain of your team and your Norris Trophy candidate only puts 2 points up, not much you can do. So
right. So now,
onward and upward for Colorado.
What's that?
I said onward and upward for Colorado.
Definitely. So Florida and Washington. Washington won the first game and Washington won the third game. So, for a little while they had a 2-1 series lead, but this was never in doubt in my mind. Like,
really?
Yeah, no, never.
Right, let's hear why.
I'll give you a couple of reasons. One, I almost called him Bobrovsky. Sergey Bobrovsky.
Just call him Bob. His friends call him Bob.
So he's played really well this season. And the Panthers won the President's Trophy as the league's best team, most points in the regular season. And they had 29 comeback wins during the regular season. So it's almost like the Panthers want to be behind by a goal or two, and then they kind of wake up and go, okay, let's play, right? Now, I'm not saying that's what they did there, but, I mean, we have a pattern here. 29 come from behind wins in the regular season. 3 come from behind wins in the first round of the playoffs. So, heck, they came from behind and won game 4 in overtime. And then in game 6, they came from behind twice and won in overtime. So, Washington is the type of team that could steal a series, but I just didn't think that was going to happen. I just did not think that was going to happen. I mean, yes, they have Ovechkin, and Ovechkin is a great goal scorer, but I mean, he's a great goal scorer, but he's not the whole team. He's not everything.
No, he's not. And one of his setup guys wasn't there for most of it. That was Tom Wilson. As much as I love to hate on Tom Wilson, he's a cog in that machine. I mean, you have to give him that. And he's not just the guy that's out there putting on hits and blasting people. He's contributing to the scoring. And, not having him there was, I think, hurt. Oshie, I think, played out of his mind.
Mm-hmm.
But, again, like you said, just like one player isn't the team, Oshie had 6 goals and 7 points. So it's like, Backstrom had 6 points, and Ovechkin, he had 6 points too, but only 1 goal. So here's your goal scorer, can only put 1 goal against, this Florida team that I don't know. I think Florida, even though they were tops of their division and even the conference for a lot of the season, I feel like the Florida team just flew under everybody's radar. Like, that's Florida. Nobody paid any attention to those guys. And
Except they were the best team in the during the season.
But that's the thing. You get no one talking about them. People talk about all the other teams, and no one talks about them. And I don't know if it's because people still aren't sold on the fact that Florida has hockey teams, and, oh, by the way, those hockey teams are good. But we're about to find out because they're going up against each other. And this is one of the things that people wanted to see. They wanted to see a battle of Florida, and they wanted to see the battle of Alberta. Well, guess what? We're getting them both because Washington couldn't, they couldn't make it happen. I think it's interesting if you look overall. Washington didn't give up a single power play goal.
Really?
In that whole series. You know that they killed off every single penalty that entire series. That's crazy. To say that and then be like, but they lost. That's just crazy to me because special teams and defense win championships, right? But I think I saw the stat that overall they had they were only outscored like 20-19. So overall,
yeah, actually, that's what it was. Florida had 20 goals. Washington had 19 goals throughout the 6 games.
It's pretty even when it comes to that, but it's like, a 3-2 win or a 2-1 win or a 4-3 win. Yeah, you lost by 1. And then maybe one of your wins was like a bunch of points. I actually thought, the Capital hater that I am, I actually thought the Capitals were going to beat Florida. So, not that I'm disappointed. It's not like I had money riding on it or anything. But I just kind of figured that was going to happen.
There was that rumor during towards the end of the regular season that one of the teams that was interested in Marc-Andre Fleury was the Washington Capitals, but that he didn't want to play for Washington because they were such a big rival of the Penguins. Now, I don't know if that's true or not, and we're going to talk about the Wild. We're going to talk about the Wild next, but it makes you wonder if they got better goaltending for the playoffs, the Capitals, if they would have gotten past the Panthers, because Samsonov is not a bad goaltender, but I just don't think he's a great goaltender yet. He's not where Shesterkin is right now. And just to kind of give like an example of another Russian goaltender who's maybe a little bit further along in his career, but also a young goaltender.
I thought Sergey Samsonov did fine. I mean, Ilya Samsonov, sorry. I don't know how I confused the two. I don't think he was bad. I don't think he was a bad goaltender at all, but I just think he just got put in a, Vanacek played too, didn't he? He had like 2 starts. So, I mean, what's the saying? If you don't have one goaltender, you have no goaltenders.
Right. And, yeah.
That's part of the issue here is you don't have a guy that you can ride to the end. It can backfire on you.
Now, the Wild had 2 goaltenders. So now we look at the series between the Blues and the Wild, and the Blues won that series 4-2. And, St. Louis won the first game, but Minnesota wins the next 2. So then they look like, all right, they're going to do this. But then St. Louis wins game 4, 5-2, wins game 5, 5-2, wins game 6, 5-1. So the Wild made that big trade for Marc-Andre Fleury. And they started Fleury in the first 5 games of the playoffs, and he dropped the first game. But then again, when your team doesn't score, you can't blame your goaltender. You know what I mean? You can't really fault the goalie. Same with like a 1-0. I mean, your forwards have to score. You know, you can't just put it all on the goalie. You're not going to win a game 0-0. Somebody has to put a puck in the net, right?
That's really exactly what happened right here. I mean, you need your best players to be your best players, right?
Right.
Kirill Kaprizov was their best player. That was it. No one else showed up.
Right.
I mean, 2 other guys had 2 points. That's it. I mean, when no one else is scoring, what are you going to do? You can only save so many pucks.
Right. So it's interesting that then in game 6, the Wild are like, okay, you know what? We're going to switch to Cam Talbot. Okay. So
What's the final score of game 6?
5-1.
5-1.
Yeah.
So
Lou scored 5 and
so Talbot gave up 4 goals on 26 shots.
yeah. He's allowed the same amount of goals as Marc-Andre Fleury. So the only difference is that the team scored less for Talbot than they did for Fleury.
Yeah. Look, again, if you don't have one goaltender, you have none. And that's really what you had here. There's absolutely no reason in my mind that they, and this could be the homer in me from being a Fleury fan, but there's no reason why they couldn't have rode Fleury the whole way through. Yeah, I understand at that point they were just like, we got to do something, we got to mix it up. But I don't know. I'm not a coach. I would have put him on a short leash, 2 goals, maybe 3 goals. That would have been it. I would have been back to the flower, and it would have been over with. But that's just me, and I'm not a coach.
In game 6, once they allowed 3 goals, it was over because they couldn't score more than 1 goal in game 6, the Wild.
Essentially, it was over, but you never know. You change your goaltender up, you put Fleury back in, the team all of a sudden wakes up and be like, hey, we got to do this for Marc-Andre. Let's go.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get out there. Let's do it.
Right.
But nothing. They played listless. I mean, I thought the Wild were going to be like that sleeper team that kind of quietly moves their way through the playoffs, eliminating teams that they have no business eliminating. But instead, their special teams were freaking horrible. Look at the stats on their special teams. Their penalty kill was like less than 70%. That's not going to get you anywhere. And it didn't.
I will say this, though, about Cam Talbot. I want to know who his stylist is, and I want to hire that stylist. Because when I was putting together my list of the oldest player on each team to not win the Stanley Cup, Talbot is the oldest non-cup winner on the Wild, because, of course, Fleury, who's older than him, won the Stanley Cup, multiple times. But Talbot's got this like beard and really nice. He's got like a really cool haircut, and he's got a beard, and he's got a little bit of gray coming in on the temples, and he just looks cool. He looks cool, like Reed Richards cool, Mr. Fantastic from the Fantastic Four. Just enough gray to look like you're old and wise enough, but just enough brown to still look like you're young enough to like go out and kick ass. So I want to know who his stylist is, and I want to hire that person because I need a new haircut. I need a new look, and that's the look that I want.
Have you seen the new Doctor Strange movie?
I haven't, because I still refuse to go to theaters because I don't want to get sick from COVID. So I just want to like wait until it's on Disney Plus or on demand or some thing where I can stay home on my really comfortable couch and watch a movie.
Okay.
Why?
Well, then I won't say anything. But you brought up Reed Richards, so that's what it reminded me of.
Oh, okay, yeah. I heard that.
So I don't want to give away any spoilers on this show. Although we're not a movie show, so I should be able to give away whatever spoilers I want.
Right.
But I won't.
Well, that's the one thing I like about sports is that there are no spoilers. The game happens when it happens, right? You can't spoil the next round for me because it's reality. It's not like I saw an advanced screening copy of round 2 of the playoffs.
If you ask some fans, this thing has been scripted since the beginning of the season.
Oh, yeah, everybody complains so hard about the referees. Oh, they don't like my team. They don't like my team. You know what? Both sets of fans complain just as hard about the officiating.
Yep. It'll never change.
So let's talk about the big upset, if you can call it that. This was the only team that did not have home ice advantage that won in the first round of the playoffs. And, of course, I'm referring to the plucky underdog Tampa Bay Lightning, who upset the Maple Leafs, who finished higher in the standings and had home ice advantage. And the Lightning, pulled through in Game 7 on the road and won the series and beat the Maple Leafs. I wasn't surprised. Was not surprised.
Yeah, I'll agree with that, and I'll tell you why in a second, but go ahead.
Well, and it's not even like because Toronto's going to be Toronto. Because
that's kind of what happened.
Well,
if it happens for 17 years straight, it's kind of like a thing, right?
Prior to 2016, before the Chicago Cubs won the World Series in baseball, my joke was that anyone in Toronto who's a Maple Leafs fan, you're welcome to be a Cubs fan because we're just like the Maple Leafs, right? There's high hopes at the beginning of the season, and then there's front office incompetence, and then maybe they make it to the playoffs, maybe they don't, but then they disappoint everybody, and yet the Cubs fans keep coming back every year, lining up for more punishment. And I felt like Toronto fans are a lot like Chicago Cub fans, so I just thought, they should, if you're a fan of one, you should be a fan of the other one because they're the same. They have the same behavior. But then the Cubs won the World Series in 2016, so now they're not the lovable losers in blue anymore. They were actually a good team and have, a championship in recent memory.
Canada has their own bad baseball teams, though, like the Blue Jays and the Montreal Expo. Oh, wait. Never mind.
They got exported.
The Expos were exported.
The Montreal Exports, right?
Yeah, exactly.
The only thing that didn't get exported was their mascot.
Yeah, he found a new home.
So here's the deal with Tampa Bay. Andrei Vasilevsky is one of the best goaltenders in the league, but he's streaky. He's run hot and cold, especially since the latter half of the season. He had an injury around Christmas. I can't remember if it was COVID-related illness or if it was an injury, honestly. He's on my fantasy hockey team, so I was kind of watching every little step he took. Oh, he's not in the practice. What does this mean, right? So I was following him, but I noticed that in the latter half of the season, he'd be streaky, where he would allow 4 or 5 goals from a team like the Red Wings. In like a game that he should win, they would lose, and he would just not play well. But then he'd come back, and then he'd win like a 2-1 game. But there would be times where he'd lose 4 games in a row, and he'd allow 4 goals in a game. So Vasilevsky has been streaky. Like when he's bad, he allows 4 or 5 goals. When he's good, he gets a shutout or allows 1 goal. So that's really what it was to me. The Lightning, their goaltender's streaky, but when he's good, he's amazing. And then the other thing is that if you think about their core, all their core players are there. Victor Hedman, Steven Stamkos, Andre Palat, Alex Killorn. I'm forgetting somebody, but you get the idea. Like their core from their last 2 seasons are still there, right? It's not like where they lost like a handful of their top players. They've lost some of their bottom 6 or some of their like lower tier defensemen, but then they've also got some worthy replacements for them. So I feel like they're pretty much like the same team as the past 2 years. Maybe not as good, maybe because they finished a little bit lower in the standings this time, but I still think that they are a legit contender to three-peat.
Yeah, I hate to say it, but I kind of feel sort of the same way. If it comes down to them in Colorado, though, I don't know. I'd have to give the edge to Colorado a little bit, even though they have the experience. That might be a 7-gamer right there. But, yeah, so this whole series, I want to say I feel bad for Toronto, but I don't.
Toronto had more goals, too. 24-23. So they had the edge in goals, but it doesn't matter if you score 5-0. They won the first game 5-0, and everybody was like, this is gonna be the year that Tampa Bay doesn't do well. And I'm just thinking, nah, Vasilevsky had a bad game.
And that's the thing. That tells you how close the series won. It goes to 7 games. If you look at the shots on goal, I think they were one different. It was like 215 to 216 on shots overall. So, I mean, you're looking at a situation where you've got pretty much evenly matched teams just slugging it out back and forth. And it's not like Toronto didn't have, a possibility of winning because, again, if your stars show up, generally you're going to perform. And their stars showed up. I mean, Austin Matthews had a ton of points. Mitch Marner, Nylander, Morgan Riley, Tavares, all those guys had a ton of points. And, that's what you need if you're going to go far in the playoffs. It's just your opening round matchup you don't want it to be the defending Stanley Cup champs. I don't care if they are having an off day. Doesn't matter. They know how to win. They're built to win. And like you said, it's basically the same team with some bottom end structure changes, but those bottom end fill-ins have been outstanding for them. So it's like you lose a few guys, a few role players at the bottom, and you replace them with just as good. And here we are. And yeah, I agree. Vasilevsky was off. If this was a Vasilevsky like we all are used to seeing and know, I don't think this went 7 games. But yeah, I agree. He was off a little bit. Whether he picks it up in the next round, I don't know. But
he'll have to.
Wasn't it? Yeah, he's going to have to, but he definitely wasn't himself. That's for sure.
Yeah, it did go 7 games, and Toronto did play well, but I mean, Tampa Bay is still, like I said, very much the same team they were last season. And again, actually, now I remember the players that I wanted to mention. Their core of Steven Stamkos, Victor Hedman, Andrei Vasilevsky, Nikita Kucherov, Alex Killorn, Braden Point, Andrei Palat.
And Points
Those
hurt.
are the guys that they won the Cups with the last 2 years, right?
Yeah, and Points hurt. So, he's not
That's
even,
right.
they even announced he's not playing game 1, the next
Right.
series. So, yeah, here's the thing. Like I said, I don't feel bad for Toronto. I mean, I do feel bad, sort of. But I think my feeling bad is misguided because it's not so much I feel bad for like the fans and stuff because I don't, because their fans are insufferable. What I feel bad for is the fact that I have to listen to months and months and months of Toronto media just bitching and moaning about everything, and the fans all ready to jump off the ark and drown themselves. That's what I'm tired of hearing.
Oh, that we're going to get 45 minutes of sports radio talk on every hockey show about who the assistant to the assistant director of player personnel for the Toronto Maple Leafs is going to be. Like the rest of us give a shit.
I mean, everything is always the sky is falling. And that's just the way it is because that's where hockey media is based. It's based in Toronto. They're under a microscope. It's like any sports here in the United States in New York. Everybody's under a microscope because that's the big market. And so more attention is being paid for it or paid to it. And I get it. I mean, I get it. But I just, when you go through this much and you have these kind of expectations going into the season, because I don't want to say it was boom or bust for them, but it kind of was. It was like we built this team around a winning. This is going to be a winning product, and to go in and, like I said, it was a bad matchup for them. If they would have had a lesser team, they might have also swept, considering how they were playing. But unfortunately, the top played the top, and that was the end of that. So,
right.
But yeah, I guess I feel bad for myself because I don't want to listen to all the Toronto whiners. Just the same as I don't want to listen to Pittsburgh whiners. Because I don't. And I made it a point to not be one this year, and I'm not.
Well, it's only been 1 day, but yes, you have not.
Hey, baby steps.
Right. So, Carolina versus Boston. So what was interesting about that series was the first 6 games, it was like not only did the home team win in each of those first 6 games, but they stomped the hell out of the other team. You look at the first 2 games, Carolina wins 5-1, Carolina wins 5-2. And you go, wow, the Bruins look horrible. They don't have a chance. Then you look at game 3, Boston wins 4-2, and then game 4 they win 5-2, and it's like, okay, now the series is even. As they say, it's not really a series until somebody wins, or excuse me, it's not really a series until somebody loses a home game. Carolina wins game 5, 5-1. Boston wins game 6, 5-2. So it's just like, in today's NHL, I'd say a 5-1 or 5-2 win is pretty lopsided. anything, 3 or more goals, that's pretty decisive.
I mean, it's decisive from that standpoint, but let's face it, we're in a goal scoring era. So seeing scores that have a combined of 8 goals, 9 goals, that's not unheard of. It's happens a lot over the last couple of years.
No, but you grew up in the era
playoffs,
where the Penguins would win 10-6
agree.
or something.
No, I agree. There was that, and we're not quite at that point yet. But goal scoring is up, and it's gone up every year for the last 3 years. And you can attribute that to a lot of different things, and one of the big ones is you have a lot more. I don't want to say superstars, but you have a lot more goal scoring talent across the league on many of these lines on these teams. I mean, let's face it, Boston has one of the top lines in hockey for now. Having Pasternak and Marchand and Bergeron and those guys playing together makes a big difference. But when any one of those guys or multiple are injured and out of the lineup, it doesn't translate well down the line. And that's part of the issue that Boston ran into, I think. That and the fact that they put in, what's his name? Linus Ullmark, right?
Mm-hmm.
As their starting goaltender in the beginning. And he just essentially got shellacked the first couple of games. So when they went back to Jeremy Swayman, things settled down a little bit. But still,
I'm surprised they didn't go with Swayman from the get-go.
I am too, considering how well he played during the regular season. But I don't know if there was some issue, like if he was injured or if there was something, if he was nursing something or what. Because I assumed that would happen too, but obviously it didn't. But I think the big talk here and the big takeaway from this, other than you got to give the Hurricanes some credit on here. I mean, it's a well-coached team. It's a well-run team. I mean, they played well all around in all facets of the game. But what everybody's talking about is Bergeron going to retire. That's all anybody's talking about now. Was that his last game? Everybody's sad. No more Bergeron. He's going to retire. He's not that old.
No, he's not.
I'm like, people, come on. It's not the end of the world here. I don't think he's that old, and I don't know, but I don't think he's going to hang it up yet. Do you?
I don't think he's going to either, unless, you don't know. You don't know. I mean, look at Getzlaf. Getzlaf was a little younger, and he retired.
Winning keeps you young.
Yes.
Right? When's the last time the Ducks won anything?
2007.
I mean, let's be honest. When's the last time the Ducks were a contender for anything, really? Winning keeps you young. I mean, Getzlaf, yeah, he was a stalwart, probably going to be a Hall of Famer, maybe. But, it gets tiring. Yeah, season's long. Do you want to play into the postseason? Of course, because that's why you play. But every year in and year out. I mean, that's a lot of golf, right? So I think it's probably easier and you have more longevity when you play for teams that win and you have a chance and you're on a contender, which the Bruins have been for a lot of years. And I don't know. I think biggest speculation is the fact that he's an unrestricted free agent. So, does he keep playing and sign somewhere else? Does Boston re-sign him, or does he just give it up? Because
he said that he has no plans to play anywhere else.
Yeah,
He
exactly.
wouldn't even think about it.
Well, yeah, you say that now, but I mean, I hate to use that cliche because it's well overused, but even Gretzky was traded. So
one
a
thing
player with loyalty might leave. You never know. He might change his mind.
One thing I want to say really quick, because I didn't mention this, but the game, obviously it came down to Game 7. We had a lot of Game 7s, and this one Carolina won 3-2. So whereas the earlier games in the series, it was one team clobbering the other team, that last one was really a way closer, way tighter game. So it's in, it's one thing when you can win a game 5-1, great. But when you can win a game 3-2, that's just as important, or probably even more important. Easy to win in a blowout, harder to win in a close game.
Yeah, and because there's the stress is that much higher. I think some of these guys seem unfazed and they play like they're unfazed, but you got to be able to. I mean, you got to be feeling that pressure. You have to. I mean, I don't see how you wouldn't be human if you didn't.
Right.
The Bruins started off bad pretty much in every game. Like they were playing from behind, and game 7 was that period where, yeah, they were getting out played by Carolina, but they almost made it out of the period until like, what was it, like 2 minutes left or something when Carolina finally scored. So it was like, oh, they're finally going to get out and not be trailing, and that really didn't happen. But I thought it was kind of cool for the future of Boston to see that over all of that, I didn't really see Swayman buckle. Not at all. Like, of the games that I watched, and I didn't watch all of the games of that series, but I got to see the vast majority of the last 3. And for being a younger guy with not a lot of experience, he was up for the task, which I mean is good for the future of the goal position for Boston. Because filling Tuukka Rask's skates is difficult, and you can't bring Tim Thomas back. So what are you going to do? You got to have somebody.
Oh, one other thing that we didn't mention that we should just mention really quick is that keep in mind that the Hurricanes were without their starting goaltender, Frederik Andersen. And so it was Antti Raanta who started the first 2 games, but he was hurt during game 2. And then he was replaced by rookie Pyotr Kochetkov. I should know his name better because he plays
Easy
for the
for you to
Chicago
say.
Wolves. Yeah. So he was replaced, and then he started game 3. But then the Bruins won that game, and then Raanta came back. So I mean, the Canes were down to their 3rd string goalie. Seems to be kind of a theme in this playoff series. You look at Nashville.
So when we started talking, you're going to see a theme.
Yep, Nashville with their 2nd and 3rd string goalies, and then we got Carolina with their 2nd and 3rd string goalies, and then we'll get to Pittsburgh because that was pretty damn crazy. I mean, even the Avalanche had to start their backup for a game, so it was kind of like that. So yeah, I mean, I think the Hurricanes are. I mean, they played well, but I think what I couldn't get over is, like, I remember everybody talking about the Calgary Flames. Oh, the Calgary Flames are so good this season. Oh, the Calgary Flames. Don't sleep on the Calgary Flames. And I'm like looking at the standings, and then I'm looking at like the Carolina Hurricanes, and I'm like, the Hurricanes keep winning, and nobody's talking about the Hurricanes, and everybody's like, oh, the Flames, but it's like, what about the Hurricanes?
I mean, you gotta hand it to them. You got guys that are playing. I don't want to say above their pay grade, but come on, who had Max Domi scoring that goal? Not me.
Goals.
Yeah, not me.
Two
yeah,
goals.
2 goals. I certainly didn't. Whoever had that on the pick'em made some money, but yeah, I mean it's stuff like that. It's guys that are playing like above and beyond for that team, and part of that goes back to their coach. I mean, any player on that team, they say it all the time. Every one of them would go through a wall for Brindamore, and he runs a tight ship down there, but the players love him and they would do anything for the guy. So, a few years ago with them coming out to the center ice and doing all the crazy stuff and celebrating the wins at the end of it, and
the storm surge.
Yeah, and the bunch of jerks and all of that. I mean, look, it's a team that plays well as a team, and they have this culture that they created down there. So, I mean, you got to give it to them. I mean, you really do. I mean, that's a good organization, and it's run really well, and the team's playing for them, and they get to move on to the next round.
All right, let's talk about Edmonton and Los Angeles, because that was another entertaining series. So LA pretty much stole game one, and then Edmonton clobbered them the next two games. But then LA gets a shutout in game four, and then LA gets an overtime win in game five. So now the Kings are up 3 games to 2 in game five. And then they got game
After
six.
game five, honestly, I thought the Oilers were done. I was like, put a fork in them, they're done. After that overtime loss, I was like, that's it. This is over.
Yes, because Edmonton got shut out 4-0. That's a big deal when you shut out Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. And then in game five, yeah, LA gets that overtime win. So then game six is in Los Angeles. Honestly, I got to tell you, I didn't watch that overtime game. I was so tired. I went to bed. There are two things working against me. And I like overtime hockey, but at that point, I was like super tired. And Leah Hextall was calling the game. And I'm not a fan of her play-by-play. I have no problem with women in broadcasting. I don't enjoy her voice because she has a very soft-spoken voice. And they score! And it just sounds like she's trying to talk loud, like her microphone's not on. And so I'm just like, I'm going to fall asleep during this game. I might as well just go to bed. So I went to bed, and then the next morning I see the Kings scored like a minute and a half in. And I'm like, oh, I should have stayed up.
Yeah. I don't know how to comment on this one because, like you preface to say, I'm all for women broadcasters and women and reporters and hockey and all of that kind of stuff. And it sucks that we have to say those types of things. But yeah, I think the overall sentiment, and of course, social media being the toxic environment it is, I get it. But, man, I have not run into anybody that essentially said that they enjoy her broadcast. And it's one thing if she's interviewing players and talking and that kind of stuff. It's a totally different thing if they throw her on play-by-play.
I mean, likewise, I can't stand Kenny Albert. But the only thing that makes him bearable to me is that he's always paired with Eddie Olczyk. And I love Olczyk. And he'll throw it over to Olczyk to tell a story. And Olczyk talks a lot as color commentator anyway. But I was never a fan of Marv Albert. And then when his son Kenny Albert was doing all the hockey games for NBC, I was just like, oh man. Like, you knew it was a good day when you heard Doc Emmerich, and I knew it was a bad day when it was Kenny Albert. All right, well. And actually, though, I will say this. Most of the Kings games, that one in particular, was Leah Hextall on play-by-play. Most of the other ones was Randy Hahn of the San Jose Sharks, who I absolutely love. Randy Hahn and Brett Heidekin on color. So they basically had the Sharks team doing most of the games that were in LA or Edmonton, because they had the San Jose guys that they could tap for that. So when I was just like, yes, it's Randy Hahn and Brett Heidekin, I'm going to enjoy the hell out of this game, because another team I watch a lot are the Sharks. So I like them, and I'm kind of used to them. Even if they're not your favorite announcers, like if you have to rank them, sometimes when you're just used to them, you're happy with that. But I legit like Randy Hahn and Brett Heidekin. So I did enjoy that when they did those games. That it made it worth staying up for.
Here's one thing that I am disappointed. They made such a big deal about bringing ESPN back in the fold, and ESPN was going to be this broadcaster for the NHL again, right? And so far, I think they've done a fairly decent job with coverage and everything else. But who's one person at ESPN that's towed the hockey line this entire time? That's Linda Cohen. And what have they done to use her? She sits in the studio and just says, coming up at the break, we're going to talk about blah, blah, blah. It's like, yeah, I get it. She's got the seniority and, having a steady job, going to a desk and sitting there talking about it. I get it. But man, she's so much better. She'd be so much better like doing play-by-play on these games. I mean, she plays hockey. She's a goalie. She knows hockey. She's been around it forever. She's, like I said, she's towed that line. I mean,
Mhm.
even AJ Malesko, I think AJ's good. Kendall Coyne, Schofield, she's good on the broadcast. They have a lot to add because they were players and they played and, they were involved in the game and they're involved in some type of management portion of the game.
Mhm.
Although
So
TNT's coverage last night, I will say that TNT's coverage, who was it that was on the panel? Because Gretzky wasn't on again. It was Jen Bottrell
yes.
was sitting there, and I think I said to my kid who was sitting there watching with me, I said, I always picture this. I always picture these guys sitting across there, and in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, Biz probably is not wearing pants. Just because you don't see him from the waist down. But
Right.
then I thought, yeah, he's sitting next to Jen right now, so that's probably not happening. So I don't know why that thought crossed my mind, but it did. I don't mind Jen either because again, she's got the hockey experience. If you got something to contribute and you've played the game and you've been involved in it, whether it's at the international level or in the professional level or what, you understand way more than somebody that just is here. I've been around hockey my whole life, but I've not been a player or anything, so I'm qualified.
Well, but most male play-by-play announcers have not been players either. Doc Emmerich never played hockey, from what I
Yeah,
understand.
yeah. I mean, the play-by-play guys usually are. It's
Right.
the
So I don't
it's the
think.
color people and the analyst people. Those are
Well, I
usually the
think
ones with the background.
right, and that's a given. I think if you're color, you should have played the game at some significant level. I think with the play-by-play, I don't think that for a woman to be a play-by-play announcer, they need to have played hockey. I just want somebody with a better play-by-play voice than Leah
Yeah,
Hextall
you're right.
or
No,
Kenny Albert, for that matter.
no, you're right.
One I can't hear, and the other one I just think is boring. So, all right, the last game. Edmonton wins 2-0. McDavid factors in on both of those goals. He sets up the game-winning goal, and then he adds an insurance goal. And I got to tell you, when he had the puck behind the net and he started doing that thing where he skates one way, puts on the brakes, skates the other way, puts on the brakes, he got everybody fixated on him. He's like moving back and forth, and now everybody's watching what he's doing, right? And then didn't see his teammate sneaking up to get the goal, to get the pass. And um, when McDavid started that sequence, I'm like, all right, they're going to score. They're going to score
Yeah.
because when you think back to Yager's goal from 30 years ago against the Blackhawks, right? When he started doing that, and you just go, all right, this is going to be a goal, right? Like
Well,
you get that feeling, and you're like,
yeah,
something is about to happen
because
because this
I've
player
seen
is.
Sid do the same thing like 100 times to
Mhm,
people. You
mhm,
just make them look like fools.
right. So McDavid, 14 points in 7 games, 4 goals, 10 assists. Think he's just getting warmed up. I mean, that's a great. When they say that, like, you need to get your third line and fourth line guys scoring, but you also need your big guns to be your big guns, and he's done that.
Yeah, but my criticism of Edmonton, like for the last 2 years, probably has been,
Don't tell me they're goaltending.
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
it's the defensive play. You
Mm-hmm.
got other than your top defensive pairing, what do you got? And your goaltender, are you going to ride Mike Smith all the way to the end?
Yeah, they did get 2 shutouts against a terrible team, for what that's worth.
I mean, yeah, and if I was going to pick an overall upset, this would have been one of the ones that I picked because, like I said,
Mm-hmm.
once that overtime win happened, I was like, that's it. Edmonton's done. Put a fork in them.
Mm-hmm.
They can't. There's no way they're going to overcome this because it's going to be in their head, and they're not going to be able to, muster enough to fend off these upstart Kings. Which is funny to say that considering they had a couple cups not that long ago. But Yeah,
8 years, but who's counting?
yeah, 8 years, 10 years, 2 years. What's the difference? Um, I don't know. I mean, should Edmonton be able to be a juggernaut type team? Yeah, they should. But other than their top line for scoring, you know, it's not. I don't think. I don't think they scare anybody other than that top line. I mean, obviously having the two of the best scorers in hockey on the same line, that's kind of
Mm-hmm.
frightening, and you don't want to go
Mm-hmm.
up against them. But what else you got?
Right.
They don't have that much. I don't think they have that much scoring depth below that top line, and the defense is suspect. And I think the goaltending is shaky. But again, they played the Kings, so you get a low seed, you get a team that maybe shouldn't have been there, but they were. They take you to 7 games. Uh, I don't know.
Well, okay, now hold on a second, because I'll say two things really quick. One, the first round a lot of times is a feeling out process for teams, right? They might have players coming back from injury. They're kind of, they're getting it together, right? It's different when you play one team and you lose to that team. You go, all right, well, you know what? We're playing a different team tomorrow, or we're playing a different team in 2 games, right? And then we know we could beat that team. Now you're playing the same team for at least 4 games in a row, maybe 7 games in a row, and you have to figure them out, right? So there's a figuring out process, right? Where, you're playing a team that maybe you don't play that often. I mean, okay, these teams played each other enough during the regular season, but right, like, so one, it's kind of like you got to figure out the other team. Two, you kind of have to figure out your strategy for the playoffs. And then, the other couple other things is that, like, most championship teams have a series where things were questionable. Like, I think back to the 89 Calgary Flames, and I believe it was a game 7 against the Vancouver Canucks that went into overtime. I mean, that could have been anybody's. That could have been anybody's series, right? Because if you think of a game 7 in overtime, right, like, the underdog could win that game, go on to the next series, and then maybe even get all the way to the finals. But the Flames had to win that game 7 to come back and then basically become, they went on to become the Stanley Cup champions, right? So there's always a series somewhere in the line where things don't look too good, right? But at the time you don't think about it. But then when you look back after the 4 rounds, you go, oh yeah, think back to the 3rd game of the first round, and everybody was saying, yep, this team is going to lose, and then they come back and they win in overtime, and then they turn it around, right? So every team has that somewhere. We still don't know which team it is yet. We don't even know if it's going to be one of these playoff rounds, because it's like the history is still being written at this point. So that's the one thing I wanted to say. And the other thing, though, I'll say this really quick, having watched Duncan Keith play all those years in Chicago, and then it's like in Edmonton, he is just really just a shell of what he used to be in Chicago. I think we all thought that in Edmonton he was going to kind of have like that calming effect on their team. And I haven't seen that yet, right? Like, I haven't seen that, like, veteran leadership. Maybe it's going to come later on, but he's been more of a liability than an asset, right? I mean, maybe
Yeah,
he's
but
a great
later
asset.
on, he's long in the tooth at this point.
No, I
When's
meant
later
later
on
on,
going to happen? You
later
meant
on in the
series or in the playoffs?
conference finals or something.
If they make it that far.
When he says, well, this reminds me of when we played the Red Wings in 2013 or whatever, right? So, I mean, yeah, I kind of thought he would. I didn't expect him to contribute on the score sheet per se, but more so just kind of like give that guidance, and I don't see that happening. You know what I mean? But who knows? I mean, if the Oilers make a deep playoff run, it pays to have guys that have been there. I mean, I think back to the 2010 Blackhawks. The guy they had for that was John Madden, who had won with the Devils, right? So they brought him on because he was like that former Cup winner that could kind of mentor the younger players and know what it takes to win a championship, right? So we'll see.
Yeah. We will. That's for sure.
Penguins and
know.
Rangers.
Yeah.
Rangers and Penguins.
Can you just skip this one and go to the next one?
Yeah. I mean, I'll just say this really quick. Really quick. Penguins won game 1 in overtime. Rangers won game 7 in overtime. It's pretty much back and forth. Although, no, actually, it wasn't, because
I don't think so.
At one point, the Penguins were up 3-1. And yet you said that after the third game, you knew they were going to lose. Now, actually, let me just recap this really quick. So Tristan Jarry, first string goaltender for the Penguins, is not going to play. He's injured, right? They put in their backup, Casey DeSmith. He gets injured during overtime of game 1. Penguins put in their third stringer, Louis Domingue, who made 17 saves in game 1, and the Penguins won 4-3. Horrible that you're now on your third string goaltender, and it's a guy that I kind of had to think really hard, wait, when did he last play? Oh, he's only played 4 games over the past 4 seasons in the NHL. Yeah, then I'm wondering, I wonder if they could have tried to get Marc-Andre Fleury as an insurance goaltender, or, a 1A or whatever. You said that you didn't think that they were going to win once it was game 3.
After that next win by the Rangers, I was like, it's done. They're going to fall apart. I mean, look, you have essentially the Rangers beat. I mean, you do. You solved it. You figured out the issue. You solved Shesterkin. You put pucks behind him. You had them beat. And you let them go. To quote the Dennis Green quote, you had them and you let them off the hook. And that's exactly what they did. This was, to me, one of the all-time epic collapses of a team, because how can you go game in and game out and blow lead after lead over and over again, have multiple opportunities to close out the series, and let this team come back 3-1 and win it in 7 games? You can't. You can't even write that stuff. And yet, here's what happened here. Yeah, you can put blame on injuries. Yeah, we didn't have our starting goaltender. We didn't even have our backup. We had some third string guy that's barely played over the last 5 years that spent the vast majority of his career playing for the Coyotes. Did he play horrible? No. Did he play starting goaltender type hockey? Absolutely not. But was he serviceable? Yeah. I mean, for the time being, because what other choice do we have? We could have went to his backup, which was Alex Dorio, who we brought up from Wilkes-Barre to back him up. And everybody's like, who? Exactly, Alex Dorio. He had a card last year in last year's, I think he was in extended series. He has a young guy.
Okay.
So, but he's an AHL goaltender. In fact, he even spent time on the Nailers in the ECHL. So it's like, when you're down to that, there's trouble. But again, Domingue was serviceable. So get past that. What do you got next? Okay, Raquel goes down. Doesn't come back until game 7. You had Crosby go down with potentially a concussion, and he's out and misses time. You've got Dumoulin gone. So one of our top pairing defensemen gone. You got Chris Letang playing out of his mind minutes, game in and game out, which he usually does. But Letang's made so many boneheaded errors this year that it just continued over into the playoffs. And as good as he is on 7 plays, he's equally as bad on 3. And it drives me up the wall. And what killed them is these turnovers and everything in their own end and in the neutral zone. It's just these errant passes. And I got so sick and tired of watching this pass, looking for the perfect play to make, Sports Center highlight reel goal. Shoot the puck. You pepper the goalie. You've shown that a few are going to leak through. So shoot the puck and just keep shooting. Every opportunity, just blast the puck at the net. And instead of trying to play for the perfect pass. So, I mean, I'm sorry, but goaltending is going to be the number one issue, and that's probably going to continue to be the problem for the Pens. And yeah, did Jari come back? Sure. He came back in game 7. Did he play pretty good? Absolutely. Played great. But guess what? He didn't face that many shots. And you could watch him, and watching him all year and knowing how he plays, he's not 100%. And he absolutely was not 100%. And there were times where Shesterkin looked like he wasn't. Something's wrong with him too. So it'll be interesting to see how the Rangers fare in this next round going up against the Hurricanes. I don't know that that's a good matchup for them.
I thought that the Penguins were going to pull off an upset because the Penguins are that type of team that pulls off the upset, kind of like the Capitals, although the Capitals, they were facing the Panthers in the first round. But the Penguins, I mean, yeah, when they have all their horses, they could have won this series, and they should have probably won this series. I mean, again, looking at like the scores to game 3 and game 4, when you score 7 goals and another 7 goals, it doesn't really matter who you have in net at that point when you put up that many goals. So, but yeah, they couldn't get it done game 5, and in game 6, Crosby had to miss with an injury, and that was a big blow to them when they don't have Crosby in the lineup.
I mean, it's a huge blow. You had everybody talking already, and it's only the first round about how, right now the Conn Smythe is going to Crosby because he's playing freaking out of his mind. And like the best players in the league do, they elevate their game when the time comes for them to do so. And Crosby was like obviously playing nuts. I mean, between him, Gensel, and Rust on that line itself, they had 28 points. 28 points. Just
right.
The 3 of them on that line. Crosby makes everybody better that he plays with. He gets guys paid. So when this season's done, which for them it is, I mean, Rust is unrestricted free agent. You try to tell me he's not going to get paid a lot to go somewhere else. He absolutely is. Letang, gone. Malkin, gone. All these guys are done. Their contracts are done. It wouldn't surprise me if you see Gino playing for another team next year. It wouldn't surprise me if Rust is playing on another team. It honestly wouldn't surprise me if you see Letang gone too. Because I'm pretty sure the band's breaking up. And it's sad, but it happens. Crosby's not going anywhere. But I think the other 3 guys, maybe not. We might not see those guys next year. And I mean, not to mention some of the other role players and stuff like that. You got Mike Matheson on that team. You got Jeff Carter on that team. Evan Rodriguez has been playing like out of his mind, although he's the reason why they lost. Not last night's game, but the night before or the previous game because of his bonehead stupid penalty that he took. But whatever. Congratulations to the Rangers. I mean, the one thing I'll give the Rangers is doesn't matter how many goals they were behind, didn't phase them. Didn't phase them one bit. The one thing I noticed about that team is they had resiliency and resolve that they didn't get rattled. Not once, not ever in that entire series. Didn't matter if they were playing from behind or not. Nothing bothered them. Nothing seemed to phase them. They stuck with it, and they weren't playing. Even though they were playing from behind, they weren't actually playing from behind. They were just playing. And, those are the signs of a team that can win. And even though they're young and don't have a lot of experience, and we're still technically in one of those rebuilding years of the team, they look pretty darn good to me.
So then the last series was the Flames and the Stars, and Calgary won that in game 7 in overtime. So it was a pretty close series. I mean, if you look at the total goals, Calgary got 15 goals, Dallas got 14 goals. I mean, again, the Rangers and Penguins series, a lot of these were pretty close. So not Edmonton and LA. Edmonton far outscored LA, but Pittsburgh and New York, 29-28 in goals. Calgary and Dallas, again, just 1 goal was the difference overall. Although, I mean, I know that doesn't matter because you can win one game 10-0 and then lose the other the next 5 games 1-0, and sure, even though you scored more goals than the other team, it's not a total goals series. But I just kind of like to look at that as just kind of like a metric, because I mean, goal scoring is what it's about. And yeah, okay, if you score a bunch of goals in a blowout win, that's fine. But if you see both teams are kind of scoring the same amount, I think it puts it in a little bit of perspective, because a lot of these games
What you said though, the
What?
Penguin Rangers series, it was, what'd you say, 29-28?
Yeah, Pittsburgh had 29 goals. New York had 28 goals.
This series had 30 goals total. Actually, under 30, wasn't it? It was
50, 29 for
29,
Calgary
yeah.
and Dallas.
Total. That's the total scoring.
I mean, let me read off these scores really quick. They're almost comical. 1-0.
You want to talk about a defensive battle.
You had Calgary win 1-0, and then Dallas win 2-0. Then Dallas win 4-2. Calgary win 4-1. Calgary win 3-1. Dallas win 4-2. Calgary win 3-2. So these were low-scoring affairs, you can say.
Yeah. I think people were talking about it being like the most boring playoff hockey they've seen in years.
This was the series that I like. If something else was on, I watched. Like if a different series was on at the same time, I watched that instead. I think one time I didn't even watch one of the games when I was probably editing one of our podcasts, and I just said, I really want to edit my podcast. I don't want to watch the. I don't want to watch the. This game, game 4 or whatever. Don't really care. I'd rather edit the podcast. So I mean, obviously Calgary, everyone's talking about how great Calgary is. And I'll tell you this, everybody outside of Dallas wanted the Flames to win because they wanted to see that Battle of Alberta, which we're going to get, right? Like, always entertaining. I think about like whenever there was like a Calgary Edmonton game on Hockey Night in Canada, I'm like, oh, hell yeah, I am watching that. Like, I always watch Hockey Night in Canada, but and even if it wasn't Hockey Night in Canada, if I saw the Oilers and the Flames were playing, you know what they say, like a match to gasoline. Here we have like a flame to oil. What happens? Combustion, right? I mean, tempers flare, things get heated. I can go on with all these puns about fire and flames and stuff, but it kind of lends itself to it when you have one team called the Oilers and one team called the Flames.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And, the Battle of Alberta, I think people throw that around a lot too. And I've already said it a couple times during the show, but let's be honest though. That rivalry has only really reignited over the last couple years. The Battle of Alberta has been dead for years.
Yeah.
Because neither team has really been, I mean, there hasn't been much there.
Now, before we dismiss the Dallas Stars, let's talk about the play of Jake Ottinger, especially in that
guy's
last.
amazing.
Did you watch Game 7?
I watched most of the third period and the overtime.
Okay, so you saw how out of his mind Jake Ottinger was playing. 64 saves.
The dude single-handedly pretty much kept Dallas in that series.
And I've seen like in the past, I've seen like when teams get eliminated and a player cries. Like I remember Yager crying after getting eliminated. The Penguins got eliminated by the Islanders in '92, and Yager was crying because I guess he just assumed that he was going to win a Stanley Cup championship every year of his career. And then wasn't it like one year, wasn't like Radko Gudas crying after like the Flyers got eliminated or something? And I just go, oh man, like, okay, whatever. Like, I don't really, I don't like to like take pleasure in other people's suffering or like
it's
a player.
So much fun.
Okay, wait, hold on. Brad Marchand crying. That I will never get tired of when the Bruins lost the Stanley Cup and you see Marchand on the bench crying. Okay, that still makes me smile. If that makes me an awful person, so be it. But when I saw Jake Ottinger about to cry, or maybe I felt for him because I'm like, what else did he have to do? Like, he did everything except score a goal. He did everything he could to keep them in that series. I mean, he even got a shutout in game 2. And if you think about it, he wasn't the first string goalie. He wasn't the second string goalie. He wasn't the third string goalie. I mean, at the beginning of the season, he was fourth on the depth chart. You had Ben Bishop, who retired. You had Braden Holtby, who had an injury. You had Anton Khudobin, who had an injury. So then it was Jake as the number one, the de facto number one. And I had a feeling, I mean, I don't say I had a feeling, like looking back last year, I'm like, yeah, this kid's going to be a good goalie. He's got something. I had no idea. I mean, after that game, I'm just like, I hope Dallas gets it together, because I would hate to see this kid wasted on a terrible team.
I mean, I'm not going to call Dallas terrible by any means, but again, to say this for like the fourth time, your stars need to play like stars. Literally, we're talking about the stars right now.
The Dallas Stars.
Yes, but the star players on the Stars just didn't really turn out. And I don't really know, honestly, who we can call stars on the Stars anymore. It used to be, well, they got Jamie Benn, and they got Tyler Seguin, and they got Logan Couture, and they've got,
Joe
these
Pavelski.
guys, or not Logan Couture, Pavelski.
Yeah, Joe Pavelski.
That's what I meant. I don't know why I said Logan Couture. I guess because
one shark for another shark. I get it.
Yeah, that's what I did. But yeah, you have these guys that are supposed to be they're supposed to carry the team, but I don't know. I didn't hear anybody talking about those guys really. All focus is on the goaltender.
Right.
When it's a defensive battle, you got to look to the back end. And here's Ottinger. That's just guy's out of his mind, which means all of his young gun cards and everything else are going to go through the roof if they haven't started to already. But that's neither here nor there, I guess.
All right. So real quick, just before we move on to round two, I just want to get your thought on this. What do you think of 5 of the 8 series going to 7 games? We love 7 games. We love game 7s. But do you think the teams are too close now in talent? Do you miss the days when you had the Hartford Whalers playing, say, the Montreal Canadiens in the first round, and you would look and go, oh, yeah, Montreal's going to sweep them in 4, and they'd sweep them in 4. Like, do you miss those days? Or when, like you'd look and you'd go, okay, this might be an interesting series. It'll go 5-6 games, or you go, no, they're, do we miss those days where you just had like one team that would just pretty much clobber everybody? Does it dilute the quality of hockey when you have these teams that are so close to one another, when you have like a parity, as they call it? Like, some people are like, oh, that's good for the league, and some people are like, oh, that's terrible.
Yeah, I'm not one of the terrible side people, because here's the thing. What fun is it to watch a blowout every night? I don't want to see that.
No.
Yeah, if I'm a fan of the team playing, do I want to see that team blow the other team out? Sure. But as an overall hockey fan, let's say my team's not in it and I have to watch everybody else in the league. I don't want to see blowout after blowout and 4-game sweeps over and over again, because what's the fun in that? If teams are more evenly matched and there's more parity between the matchups, you have much more entertaining hockey. It's a much better product that's out on the ice, because you're getting these even matchups and you're getting these teams that, it's not a David Goliath thing. It's 2 heavyweight boxers evenly matched with similar records that are just going to battle it out for 14 rounds. It's not a little pipsqueak guy with a slingshot trying to take down a giant. And yeah, while those are fun sometimes, I think the overall product is way better when there's more parity.
Mm-hmm.
That's just my opinion.
No, I'll agree with you there. I mean, it would be fun when you'd see like
who doesn't like to see 10 goals in a game? I mean, everybody likes to see that, but I think that dilutes it. It really does, because it's the playoffs. You're supposed to be seeing the best teams. No one should be getting blitzed like that. It's a playoff caliber team. even the bottom seeds.
So let's talk about the next round. So I'll give my prediction. I'll buy you a little time to think about this because I didn't say, hey, let's come up with predictions for round 2. I don't like doing predictions because it seems like this. Whenever I put my thoughts down on paper or like in a blog post or something, I'm usually like dead wrong, like ridiculously wrong. And when I just think about it in my mind, and then it happens, I go, I should have told people. Yeah, I knew this was going to happen, right? But it's always easy to say, I knew that the Lightning were going to upset. Well, Gretzky knew that too.
So after we make these predictions, we're both going to put $100 on DraftKings and see who wins. So
no, the only thing I'm going to do if I do on DraftKings is I'm going to pick like the 2 worst players on each team and bet $1 on each of them for scoring the game-winning goal in Game 7, and
there you go.
You know, collect $100 on a $1 bet that whatever player is gonna score the game winner. So
I bet those odds would be a lot higher if it's like the worst player.
Well, yeah, that's what I mean. And if you risk $1, then what's $1, right? But if you can, I don't know. See, I don't know how gambling really works on these things. Like my sister tried explaining it to me, and I just once I heard the word parlay like 3 times, I just wanted to like jump out the window.
Well, if you believe any of the commercials, I mean, everybody wins all the time.
All the time, right? All right. So round 2, I want to start with Lightning versus the Panthers. Now, I will say my pick is the Panthers, but it's going to be in 7 games. This is going to be a close series. This is going to be an energetic series. And I honestly believe whichever team wins this series is going to win the Stanley Cup. If it's the Panthers, it's going to be the Panthers all the way. If it's the Lightning, it's going to be Lightning all the way. Yeah, I know the Avalanche are a great team, but that's my prediction. So I think that it is going to be the Panthers. This is the year for Joe Thornton. Then he can retire. Then we can kind of like just put a bookend on the 90s with Zdeno Chara retiring and Joe Thornton retiring. And then you and I have to admit that we're old now because all the guys that we watched when we were young are now out of the league.
And Marlowe retired too. Don't forget.
Oh yeah, that. And Patty Marlowe, right? Yes. So that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking Panthers, but I'm thinking Panthers in 7 games.
That's valid. I'm still picking the Lightning. I think the Lightning in 6. Everybody wanted to see Battle of Florida. Well, you're getting it, part 2. The Lightning beat them last year. I think they're going to do it again this year, but it's not going to be. I don't think it's going to be easy. I think it's going to be, like as good old JR would call it, a slobber knocker. I think that's what's going to be. But
this year, the Panthers have Claude Giroux, their big trade deadline acquisition.
Oh, yeah. And as we all know, Claude Giroux is awesome in the playoffs. Oh, wait. Never mind.
He's been good in this playoff so far.
Yeah. Well, he's a product of what's playing around him. And that's fine, and that's good. But I don't think the Panthers can outplay the Lightning. I think Vasilevsky bounces back in this series, and I think they win. Now, whether they get past the next round, that I don't know, because at some point you run out of gas. It's a lot of hockey for the last few years with them winning the cups. So that's my prediction.
So your prediction was, you said Lightning in 6?
I'm saying Lightning in 6.
Okay. What about, now we got the Rangers and the Hurricanes, the other big battle in the East. I'm gonna pick the Rangers to upset in 6 games.
Is that an upset though?
Well, I mean, the Hurricanes have the home ice advantage, so I mean, is it really an upset? I technically yes, but I don't think all 4 teams with home ice advantage are going to win these series. And I'm going to say that I I don't really have any statistical analysis or anything. This is just kind of me going with my gut. That's what makes it fun. If I have to overanalyze stats, then it's not as much fun. But
Going with
I
your
don't know,
gut.
man. Go with my gut. I think the Rangers are gonna pull off this series in 6 games. I mean, they got good players. I mean, they got. Kreider has been obviously having a career year, and Panarin is always awesome, and even Lafreniere has been stepping it up a bit. So, and then of course you have Shesterkin has been playing fantastic. I mean, think about that triple overtime loss to the Penguins. He made something like 79 saves or something. I could have that wrong. I think it was like 79 saves though. It was crazy.
Yeah.
So,
I agree with you on the pick. I would take the Rangers over the Hurricanes. I think it's going to go 7 games.
mm-hmm.
But I think the Rangers pull it out. It's kind of a toss. This whole matchup's a toss up. I don't know that the Rangers match up 100% well with the Hurricanes, but at the same time, I go back to what I said earlier, the poise that they showed in that series, and the Hurricanes have that ability to jump out on you and take an early lead. And I think their poise and their calmness to be able to handle that, if that keeps carrying over, I think they can pull this one out. So I'm saying Rangers in 7.
All right.
And of course, if their defense plays better in front of Shesterkin, then I would definitely give that to New York over Carolina.
All right, then our third series, Blues versus Avalanche. I'm gonna say that the Avalanche are gonna do it, and they're gonna do it in 6 games. That's my prediction. The Avalanche are just they got an awesome top line, and then they have an awesome defenseman, arguably the Norris Trophy winner in Cale Makar. So I mean, between Makar, McKinnon, Rantanen, and Landeskog, I mean, you've got 4 amazing players right there. Now the Blues also have amazing players, and they score a lot of goals. So I mean, they're not. That's why I don't think any of these are going to be a sweep. But I do think that the Avalanche are going to win, and I don't think it's going to take them 7 games to win.
Avs in 5.
Avs in 5. Wow, yep. That's almost a sweep in today's NHL.
Yeah, St. Louis will win 1 at home, but that's it. I mean, can we just give the Norris Trophy to Cale Makar for the next 5 years and be done with it, and not even have to vote anymore? Because he's nuts. He's absolutely nuts. No,
let me buy a few of his rookie cards first before he wins any awards.
Yeah, too late. You already can't afford it. So
yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's really what I would go with. I mean, yeah, the Blues have shown that they can get scoring all around. And their defense has been really good, but I don't know. This Avalanche team, they're too good.
Yeah,
they're gonna find a way right off the bat, and they're gonna shut them down. And I think it's gonna go 5 games, and that's it.
Okay.
I'm probably wrong, but you never know.
Well, it's just fun. We're not putting money on this. We're not putting any like, I'm sure the people who follow us on Twitter, if you want to give your predictions too, that's cool. Hit us up in the comments. But it's not like you and I each have like 8 million followers that are going to be like, "Oh, you guys are stupid. You don't know anything," right? You know what I mean? We'll just have 3 people who might say that, and then we'll have 8 people who go, "Great show, guys." So it more than evens out in the end.
Percentages are the same.
Oilers versus Flames. the Battle of Alberta, the first Battle of Alberta since 1991. They said that, so I had to throw that out there. Otherwise, I wouldn't have remembered that. My pick, Oilers upset in 7 games. Yes, an upset because the Flames have the home ice advantage, so technically they're the better team with the better record. But come on, the Oilers, man. McDavid.
I completely understand what you're saying. But for that very same reason and what we talked about earlier, I think the Flames beat the Oilers. I think this is going to go probably 7 games. The Flames are going to win, and it's going to boil down to goaltending. And honestly, Jacob Markstrom is a better goaltender than Mike Smith. And all they got to do is pick off Draisaitl and McDavid for a few games and at least limit them, and they'll win.
Yeah, I mean, on paper, the Flames
are
the better
games,
team.
but that's what I'm saying.
On paper, the Flames are the better team. I feel like the Oilers will make it to the Final Four and then get knocked off by the Avalanche. Like, we both agree that the Avalanche are going to make it to the Final Four. The way I see it is that the Oilers will pull an upset over the Flames, but then they'll fall pretty quick to the Avalanche. Well, I mean, let's not get ahead of myself here because, I mean, these series haven't played out yet, right? But I kind of feel like that's how things are going to shake out, at least in the Western Conference. But yeah, so we both agree that it's going to go to 7 games, that it's going to be a great series. I mean, I can't wait to see these games. Now that there's only 4 series going on, we could watch most or all of them depending on the scheduling. I don't have this. I'll put a link to the schedule in the comments, but I don't have the scheduling memorized yet. But I mean, I love it when you have an East Coast game and a West Coast game on the same night, so you could watch both of them. And hopefully that's what they did here, as best they could.
Yeah, I'm sure best they could. I mean, they have multiple networks they can roll these over on, so that's the one good thing. Back in the old days of NBC, last place you want to go looking for a hockey game is MSNBC,
right,
or CNBC, or one of those stations. At least
my
you got
joke
TBS,
was
TNT, and all the different ESPNs. So,
although I think TBS and TNT ended up putting one game on True TV because
that's true. Yeah, they had to start it because of the overtimes.
Yeah. So my joke last year was that NBC was going to put a game on the Food Network because they ran out of affiliates. They had NBC, MSNBC. I think one time they had a game on CNBC. I'm just like, wow, like all their news stations are now becoming sports stations. Okay, whatever.
Yeah, they've done that a number of times. They were using USA for a while.
I do remember that, actually. Yes.
Yeah.
So, all right. Any last thoughts before we wrap this one up? Because this has been a full podcast with lots of interesting stuff about round 1 and round 2.
Yeah, I just have one thought that I just wanted to kind of get off my chest. And I know we haven't talked a lot about hobby type stuff or card type stuff, but I just wanted to, those that follow some things going on in the hobby, some stuff came to light over the last few weeks in some various aspects that I wanted to chime in on. And it's not the act itself, because as we all know, when there's money involved with things, that anything is possible and anything's probable, and people will do what it takes to get themselves the money that they're looking for. But the bigger issue to me, I think, and a lot of people probably listening know what I'm talking about. The bigger issue to me is the army of apologists and supporters of the type of behavior that's gone on. Do I hate money? Of course not. I'm not the type of person that's opportunistic and takes advantage of stuff. And at least I try not to be. And the nefarious intent that people have, it's not anything new to the hobby. It's been around for a long time. There's always bad apples, and there will continue to be bad apples. But I think social media and the technology that the hobby has used has made things way too easy for people to hide behind some of this stuff. So in the last show that we talked a lot about, building sets and that kind of thing, and finding trade partners that you trust that are in the hobby. And I think that's more important now than ever, that you surround yourself with people that are like-minded within the hobby, and it'll make the hobby a lot more enjoyable for you. If there's breakers out there that you don't like, don't get involved with them. If there's sellers that you don't like, don't get involved with them. If there's content creators that you don't like, don't get involved to them. Cut off the noise. You can make this hobby anything you want it to be. And, you don't have to be a number. You don't have to be a statistic. You don't have to be, the guy that's looked at as, oh, they're my mark. They're my target. They're the big payday. You're a collector just like everybody else. And you should be treated just like everything else. Just remember, you can't always buy everything you like, but you can like everything that you buy. And that's important to keep in mind when you're a collector, because with the hobby changing like it is, whether you like it, whether you don't like it, or otherwise, you can't stop the change from going forward. But you can better yourself as a collector, and maybe that will rub off on somebody around you and one of those guys that you put in your circle of collectors. But everybody should just keep their head up. This too shall pass, and all of the stuff out there with the various breakers doing bad things and new people coming into the hobby that are changing things. Maybe you don't have to pay attention to them.
That
and remember,
is some great insight right there.
I was going to say, and remember, be good to yourself and kind to one another. Or what did Jerry Springer used to say at the end all the time?
I don't know, but Bill and Ted used to say, "Be awesome to one another."
Yeah, be excellent to each other and party.
Be excellent to each other. That was it. And when I was a kid, I had this T-shirt that I loved, and it said, "Don't let the turkeys get you down."
Yeah, that's exactly it. And
don't let the turkeys get you down.
Yeah, there's been a lot of negativity, especially over this past week or two, and that's all I'm saying. The hobby can be what you make it. Just find your position. That's all.
And
that's all I say. Don't mean to be on my soapbox, but you know what?
No, but you know what? You listen. There's so much stuff that I can't afford, but what's great about the hobby of card collecting is that you can always find something that fits your budget, and you can always find something that you like. For a long time, I pivoted towards older stuff because the new stuff didn't interest me or it was too expensive, right? You can always find something. For a while, I bought some Upper Deck Series 1, Series 2 extended series, and then I wasn't really going to collect anything else, other than Skybox Metal Universe. So I pivoted and I started collecting older Russian postcards of hockey players from the 70s and the 80s, right? So you can always find something interesting to you. You know what I mean? Sure. It might not be that $600 box of cards that you can't afford, so be it, right? If you can afford it, great. If you can't afford it, you can always find something that you like.
That's why I said you can't always buy everything you like, but you can like everything you buy.
Love that quote, so I think we should end it there. Thank you for listening to the Puck Junk Hockey Podcast. Please be sure to like and subscribe. Please be sure to give us a follow on Twitter. I'm at Puck Junk. Tim is at The Real DFG. And until next time, collect what you like.
For more hockey goodness, follow us on Twitter at Puck Junk.